Rejecting people has always been a common thing to do in a person's life. Typically, in most cases, people have to bite the bullet and just move on from the situation. But in this specific circumstance, rejecting a person sadly led to the brutal torture and the passing of a high school teenage girl. Hello, my name's Bootses, and in today's video, I'm going to retell you the tragic series of events of Junko Furuta's final days of her life. So get ready to sit back, relax, and hopefully enjoy the video. This video does go into dark topics including sexual assault, death, and many more. So if you're in a bad mental state or extremely uncomfortable about this situation, I strongly advise you to please skip this video. Junko Furuta was born on the 18th of January 1971 in Misato, Japan. In her teenage years, she attended the Yashio Minami High School, in which it was known that Junko had always been receiving high grades and was rarely absent from school, causing everyone to see her as a smart individual who had a bright future ahead of her. Because of this, in addition with her popularity and beauty, Junko was extremely well liked by her classmates and peers, which inevitably led to boys in her school to develop a crush on her. And one of the boys turned out to be the high school teenage thug named Hiroshi Miyano. During the evening of the 25th of November 1988, Junko finished her part-time job at the plastic mold factory and rode her bike home to watch one of her favorite shows called Tombo. However, upon arriving near her home, a mysterious man suddenly kicked Junko off her bike and immediately ran off to avoid being captured. And out of nowhere, Hiroshi approached Junko saying that he just saw what happened and offered to help her arrive home safely. As Junko knew who Hiroshi was, she'd rather be escorted home than being attacked again, so she accepted the offer and then they both started walking. However, instead of taking Junko home safely, Hiroshi guided her into going to an abandoned warehouse, which resulted into Hiroshi R-wording Junko and then taking her to a hotel to do it again. Once he was done, Hiroshi bragged about what he did to his friends, who were Nobuharu Minato, who was actually the one who kicked Junko off her bike under Hiroshi's orders, and his other two friends, Yasushi Watanabe and Joe Ogura. And disgustingly, Joe told Hiroshi to keep her hostage so that the rest of the friend group could have turns on her. They all met up and then took Junko to the house owned by Minato's parents. They then told her that they knew where she lived as she went through her notebook and told that the Yakuza members would kill her family if she attempted to escape. From wanting to keep her family safe, she didn't escape and then they forcibly had their way off her once again. As Junko's families became distraught, her parents called the police about her sudden disappearance. Upon hearing this, the kidnappers forced Junko to call her parents to say that she wasn't in any danger and said that she ran away and was off with a friend. And from this led to the investigation being withheld and thus continued the physical and sexual torture of Junko Furuta. However, one night, the kidnappers had to do an act as well as making Junko to pretend to be Minato's girlfriend when his parents came to the house. But even with the act, Minato's parents could see all through the bullshit and knew that Junko wasn't there by her own free will. However, shockingly, the parents revealed that they wouldn't report it to the police as a result of them fearing that their son would become physically and verbally violent towards them, as well as them being scared of the retaliation of Hiroshi as he was involved with the Yakuza. On the next night, Hiroshi invited two other boys that he knew to the house and led them to see Junko sitting down looking disheveled. Junko started to scream in fear and tried to make a run for it, but Hiroshi grabbed her legs and one of the new boys put a pillow over her face to stop her from making more noise. But from all the commotions, Minato's parents were startled and went up to check up on the screams, to which Minato told them that it was nothing. Then, this led to another time where the boys forced their ways onto Junko once again, leaving her in a state of unconsciousness. For over the next 40 days, the torture not only continued, but also became more vicious and painful as each day went on. If I have to say and describe each of the heinous acts done to Junko, I'll be fucking permabanned faster than Andrew Tate, so I'm just gonna provide you a list of each act that was done to her. I do not recommend searching it up whatsoever, but I can't stop you if you want to do so. So if you're going to, pause the video right now and then unpause once you're done researching, but I strongly recommend not to do so. On the 4th of January 1989, Junko had now been suffering from all the abuse from her kidnappers for 44 days, and just begged them to end her life. But they were still having too much fun. Hiroshi and the rest of the boys started to beat her with an iron bell and poured lighter fluid onto her legs, arms, face and stomach to then light her body on fire for the next 2 hours. After suffering from profusely bleeding, had pus-infected burns, and being severely beaten and malnourished, Junko finally succumbed to her injuries and passed away. Fear started to build up in the gang of boys as they were afraid of being arrested for murder. They created a plan of wrapping her body in blankets, placing her in a 55-gallon oil drum, and then filling the inside with concrete in order to hide the body. The only thing that was left visible were the long strands of Junko's hair sticking out of the concrete. They needed to hurry, so they quickly and carefully loaded it and eventually disposed the drum in a cement truck in Koto, Tokyo. For a while, the gang of boys were able to basically become scot-free from the situation as no one was able to identify where the body was hidden. However, due to Hiroshi's stupidity, it led to Junko's bodies being found. A few weeks after they hid the body, Hiroshi and Joe were eventually arrested, but not due to the incident with Junko. On January 23rd, they were both brought into the police station for another incident regarding a 19-year-old girl who they previously kidnapped in December. However, Hiroshi didn't know that. He thought that the situation was related to Junko, so he slipped up and revealed to the police where him and his friends hid the remains. The police went to the location of the site and cracked open the oil drum to reveal the morbid state of Junko's deceased body. Junko's families was notified and they were nothing more than horrified and extremely devastated to the news. As a result of Junko's decomposition, she had to be identified through fingerprint scanning, and sadly during her autopsy, it had been revealed that Junko was pregnant at the time of death. Hiroshi, Minato, Watanabe, and Joe were then all placed into custody, including 7 additional accomplices who took advantage of Junko after their DNA was found inside of Junko's body. The death of Junko and the crimes were now out to the public eye, but the group of boys were not shown due to them being juveniles at the time of the crime. But journalists from a Japanese magazine did not give a single shit, so they uncovered the identities, revealing the faces of who were behind the death of Junko. The reason behind this action was on the grounds that, given the severity of the crime, the group of boys were deemed as inhuman, thus did not have their right of being anonymous upheld. After the identities were now out to the public, the 4 teenage boys were forced to go to trial and then were found guilty of committing bodily injury that resulted in the death of Junko. I don't know a lot about the Japanese law and court system relating to these type of situations, but holy shit, they received incredibly light sentences for these crimes. Hiroshi received a sentence of 17 years in prison, but believed that it was unfair, so he appealed it, causing the Tokyo court to additionally add 3 more years to his sentence, totaling up to 20 years. Minato, who originally received a 4 to 6 year sentence, was resentenced to 5 to 9 years upon appealing his lower initial sentence. Same thing with Watanabe, he was initially sentenced to 3 to 4 years in prison, but received an upgraded sentence to 5 to 7 years. As Joe didn't want to increase his sentence, he didn't appeal and accepted the fact that he was going to jail for the next 8 years. Before even reaching their release dates, the boys were all set free way too early than they were supposed to, and this led to some of them not learning their lessons and continuing on pursuing the same criminal activities. Hiroshi Miyano was released from prison in 2009, moved back to associating himself with the Yakuza, and tried to continue on with his life. 4 years later, in January 2013, Hiroshi was taken to custody as the police arrested him for allegedly being involved with fraud. However, as a result of a lack of evidence, he was released and set free 1 month after without charge. For Nobuharu Minato, he legally changed his name to Shinji Minato to avoid all the commotion and drama in relation to his involvement with the case. But on the 19th of August 2018, he was allegedly involved in another violent attack which led to another man being hospitalized. There was no outcome that I could find, so I assume that he was likely punished again and is now living his life freely. Similarly to Shinji, Joey changed his last name and took the family name Kamisaku after his release in August 1999. He allegedly still continued to boast about his role in the kidnapping, rape, and torture of Junko to others and didn't even feel remorseful whatsoever. The father of Joe felt extremely guilty and remorseful, unlike his fuckface of a son, and promised to give their family's entire life savings to aid Junko's family. But it turned out that Joe took the money all for himself to live a happy life. Allegedly, and I hope this isn't true, the mother of Joe apparently vandalized the gravestone of Junko as she proclaimed that it was all her fault and the reason why her son's life is now ruined. He was later involved in another violent crime, resulting in another 4-hour torture period of a man, and even threatened to kill him, as Joe stated that he had killed before and knew how to get away with it. But after that, he is now living a free life as if nothing ever happened. Yasushi Watanabe was the only member of the group of boys that tried to stay out of trouble after the incident. There were no public articles, websites, or anything to reveal what he's been doing ever since he was released, so I assume that he's just trying to live his life and avoid all the commotions of his previous crimes. During the trial amongst all the boys, Junko Furuta was given a proper funeral of all her loved ones, wishing her to finally be at peace after everything that had happened to her. Jun Chen, welcome back. I've never imagined we would see you again in this way. You must have been in so much pain, so much suffering. The happy we all made for the school festival looked really good on you. We will never forget you. I've heard that the principal has presented you with a graduation certificate, so we all graduated together, all of us. Jun Chen, there is no more pain, no more suffering. Please rest in peace. The high school principal presented Junko with a high school diploma and provided it to her parents. In addition to this, Junko's future employer gave her parents the uniform that she would have worn in the job, and the uniform was left in the casket. Every single friend, family, and peer of Junko wished her nothing but peace, allowing her to finally be sent off to a restful afterlife.